I'm Mark Seifter.
And I'm Linda Zayas Palmer.
And this is Arcane Mark.
Welcome, everyone, to the first episode of our biased reaction overview of the Pathfinder 2nd Edition Advanced Player's Guide.
Yes.
You can see the cover right here.
And let's be biased on the cover. So you can clearly see Fea and Jarrell there are fighting against some kind of Linorm-like or sea serpent creature that's coming out of the water. Advanced Player's Guide. We've got Daji the Fox, but with more tails than in the previous Daji. And, of course, it says at the bottom, Logan Bonner, Liz Liddell, and Mark Seifter. That's pretty good. I'm biased towards that, right?
Yes, of course. Jarrell and Faye, they're representing two of the classes that appear in this book.
The Witch and the Swashbuckler. Not in that order.
Alright, speaking of in this book, let's go ahead and dive inside.
So, let's be biased towards the table of contents. So, as we can see already from the table of contents, like, there's some kind of an Isoki in the bottom of the table of contents, and there's, like, an elf on the other side, and dragon breathing acid out there with like, a Tengu, and Quinn the investigator, and whoever that is. All the way on the right side.
Yeah, well, at any rate, the table of contents breaks down the general content here. We've got a bunch of new ancestry and background content. We have 4 new classes, as well as new content for every other class that already existed in the core rulebook, and a ton of archetypes, as well as some new feats, spells, and items for your character.
Plus a glossary and index.
Yes, indeed.
And as you can see, the authors, we're already on the cover, but there's also additional writing from many other authors that are all here in the table of contents. Amirali Attar Olyai, I'm not going to be able to pronounce everyone's name, but I'll try it. Alexander Agunas, Kate Baker, Brian Bauman, Carlos Cabrera, James Case, Jessica Catalan, John Compton, Paris Crenshaw, Jesse Decker, Fabi Garza, American, Stephen Hammond, Sasha Laranoa Harving, Joanne Hong, Nicholas Horniak, Vanessa Hoskins, James Jacobs, Eric Keith, Luis Loza, Ron Lundeen, Patchen Mortimer, Dennis Muldoon, Stephen Radney McFarland, Jessica Redicop, Mikhail Raccoon, Alex Riggs, David N. Ross, Michael Sayer, Kendra Leigh Speedling, Jason Tondro, Clark Valentine, and Andrew White.
And just as many folks as contributed to writing this book, they worked on illustrating it as well.
Oh, yes,
so
there's many artists.
A few people, and I know the artist names are not as familiar to us since they're not people
a lot
we
of them were
with
people we worked with in the additional writing. When I got to ones, I was like, I can pronounce that. Plus, design lead Mark Seifter, and designers Logan Bonner, Liz Liddell, and Mark Seifter. Editing leads James Case and Leo Glass. It's got 2 editing leads because James Case had become a member of the organized play team, basically after sending like some initial emails as the editing lead and doing like the lead-in stuff. So it was a tag team effort there. Plus many other amazing editors who were on there. Judy Bauer, Patrick Hurley, Avi Cole, Kieran Newton, Lou Palazar, and Josh Fudd. So, that, and cover artist Rain Reynolds.
Lots of folks involved in this whole process.
Isn't it a great table of contents, Linda?
It is a great table of contents. Mark doesn't realize that I already flipped over to the introduction page.
No!
I didn't know you were going to read everybody's names.
Yes, well, I'm very biased about the table of contents. Alright, so the introduction page, though, I really like because of the fact that it has that sort of display on page 5, which is, when it comes to these books, I write a lot of things and I design a lot of written things, but one of the few visual representation things that that I kind of asked for a little bit, or worked on asking for, is this thing on page 5, and also the one at the beginning of the class chapters that have like a little icon and a box about the class, because I thought that would be a good way to showcase them. So I'm biased towards this too. Basically,
he's
the
presenting,
introduction is like it's a super quick introduction for the book. It's short because there's not that much to say about what it's going to be. It's just more of everything in the book.
So this section has art, the names of the ancestries and classes, art, a short sentence or two about what you'll most likely find with the character of that ancestry or class, and information on the ability boost, flaws, and other ability score related things that are going on with these.
Such as which ability score is the key ability score of your new class, and what are secondary ability scores that you might want to pick up if you are a member of that class.
Alrighty. So we get started here with Chapter 1, Ancestries and Backgrounds.
Yes.
With some
look at those picture of those kobold there
art,
in the cave.
And you can see the way here already that the art for kobolds in Pathfinder 2nd Edition is different from the art for kobolds in Pathfinder 1st Edition. They've got a lot more head relative to body on them now.
Yeah, for sure.
They can, in some ways, they can look like a little more menacing, but they're also kind of cuter, I think.
Mm-hmm.
They're more distinctive for sure than rather than looking more similar to other like reptilian ancestries. So
That's true.
I like the redesign.
That's true. So here in Chapter 1, Ancestries and Backgrounds, as you can see, we've got 5 ancestries, 3 versatile
Catfolk, kobolds,
heritage,
orcs, ratfolk, and tengu.
or 5 versatile heritages: Changeling, Dhampir, and then planar signs include Aasimar, Tieflings, and Duskwalkers. So 5 and 5, plus ancestry options for the old ancestries and backgrounds, common and rare backgrounds. Plus a sidebar that explains, hey, normally, you find uncommon and rare options during gameplay, but you're not exactly going to find your own ancestry during then, so you have to actually decide ahead of time if you're going to be playing a common or uncommon or rare ancestry or heritage, because that's part of character creation. True for uncommon and rare classes too, but there aren't any in this book, so they don't talk about it. So let's move on to catfolk. We have this very long-necked catfolk. Might be part of like the like Apatosaurus versatile heritage. So they are curious and gregarious wanderers who combine the features of felines and humanoids. And we've got catfolk. If you're a catfolk, you might demonstrate genuine interest by asking a lot of enthusiastic questions, avoid interpersonal conflict by giving someone a cold shoulder or simply leaving the area, carefully scout a target or problem before striking at it quickly, whereas others probably think you monopolize conversations with your incessant queries or opinions. They probably consider you haughty or prideful, and they probably ascribe more emotion than you feel to your involuntary purrs or growling. So catfolk have dexterity and charisma, with an ability flaw in wisdom.
So they may poke their heads into places where they shouldn't necessarily be.
That's right.
But they always land on their feet, so that's pretty convenient.
They take less damage from and don't land prone, and they have low light vision.
And one thing that I noticed here in the description is that while catfolk in Pathfinder First Edition were presented with a variety of appearances, some being more feline than others, this one talks more about, okay, they do have that more feline appearance rather than that more, I have cat ears and a cat tail, but I otherwise look like a human type thing that we sometimes saw in First Edition.
That's right.
So we have some catfolk heritages here. You can have naturally sharp claws.
Yep, you could be a hunting catfolk where you have an extra scent.
You can be a jungle catfolk who is very skilled at walking through underbrush and other difficult terrain without any sort of problem.
You could be a 9 lives catfolk where you seem to have 9 lives and bounce back from disaster because of the fact that critical hits take you to dying 1 instead of dying 2, which is one of the main causes for insta-kills, is it when you get to dying 2.
Or you could be a winter catfolk with fur that is thick and fluffy enough to give you cold resistance.
That's right. Plus, there's feats based on luck, based on being very good at balancing around and being a cat, and based on certain cat-like things like caterwauling.
Or a black cat's curse.
Mm-hmm. That's another one of those luck ones. So that's what's going on with catfolk.
So there's a lot of stuff about stealth and acrobatics and luck here, certainly.
Yep. and a sidebar about Catfolk Adventures, talking about the classes and backgrounds that you might be if you're a Catfolk Adventurer.
I also like Fastidiously Groomed, where you get a saving throw bonus against diseases because you are so good at grooming yourself.
Yep, absolutely. So,
how about the kobolds? Here they are.
Mm-hmm.
With the iconic kobold trap.
So, if you're a kobold, you might take pride in your draconic connections, whether you believe dragons or your ancestors are simply patrons, because kobolds kind of believe themselves to be connected to dragons. You might analyze your surroundings, always looking for ambushes, advantageous terrain, and escape routes, and you might naturally observe, adopt, and respect group dynamics, whether as a leader, subordinate, or equal. Others probably assume you're cowardly and won't stick around in the face of danger. They probably appreciate your ingenuity and resourcefulness, especially when it comes to building defenses, because kobolds love slow fangs, aka traps, and they probably consider your claims of draconic power to be overblown, delusional, or endearing. It depends. So there's kobolds.
Mm-hmm. So kobolds are dexterous and charismatic, but they have an ability flaw in Constitution, and they don't have a ton of hit points either. So they're not going to be the most durable of ancestries, but they can see in the dark, and they also can draw minor powers from their draconic exemplar, which is the.
It doesn't give you anything right away, but you just pick what dragon you're connected to.
Yes.
Yep, and then there's a whole table of what kind of stuff you can potentially get from that dragon. Plus heritages. The cavern kobold lives in caverns, so they're good at climbing around in caverns, and that's basically the situation. They're squeezing in caverns too.
And for a first example of drawing power from the draconic exemplar, the dragon scaled kobolds can get resistance to a type of damage that is associated with their draconic exemplar.
Yep.
Which is twice as much resistance if it's against dragon's breath weapons.
Absolutely.
That's a nice touch.
The spell scale kobold is going to draw draconic magic into themselves from the draconic exemplar, and they gain a cantrip from the arcane spell list.
The strong jaw kobold gets a jaws unarmed attack to finesse weapon. Pretty convenient. And the venom tail kobold has a vestigial spur on their tail that secretes a dose of deadly venom once per day.
Yep, and the ancestry feats show kobolds kind of mixture of bravado and cowardice. So you got like cringe, where you just kind of cringe against a critical hit and try to take less damage from that critical hit. Dragon's Presence, which is a great example of both the bravado and the cowardice, where you have unflappable confidence until it collapses catastrophically. So you critically succeed against fear after you get a success, but if you fail, you critically fail. And when you attempt to demoralize lower level creatures, you're better at it because of the fact that your unflappable confidence only shakes when the going gets tough. Plus, kobold breath.
Yeah, you can get it. You can get breath weapon. You can get snare setter also to get yourself some nice trap setting.
Yep.
Tools already at level 1 as well.
Scamper around, you can grovel later on to people, better snare abilities.
Your breath, you can get your breath magic to improve, your spells to improve as well.
Yep.
This kobold here looks like maybe they have the Dragon's Presence feat.
The red kobold, yeah, I think so.
I think they do.
Next up, orcs, forged in the fire of violence and conflict. If you're an orc, you might eagerly meet any chance to prove your strength in a physical contest. You might believe that lies and treachery are for those who lack the strength to seize what they want. You might view dying in glorious combat as preferable to a mundane death from old age or illness. Others probably see you as violent or lacking in discipline. They might underestimate your intellect, cunning, and knowledge, and they might admire your forthrightness and blunt honesty.
So when it comes to their abilities that they get, orcs are pretty straightforward. They've got a bunch of hit points, and they have strength as an ability boost. They're always going to be pretty strong. And the other ability boost is free, and they don't have a
no flaw. And they've got dark vision. And orcs, basically, you might remember them as being pretty much antagonistic a lot of the time. But in 2nd edition, because of the change with the Whispering Tyrant, the very powerful Lich who brought back his armies of the undead. Previously, the orcs were sort of enslaved by the Whispering Tyrant and forced to sort of fight for him the last time he was around. So he came back to the orcs. He's like, "You're the descendants of my armies. You must join me." And they're like, "No, die." And so they orcs who refused the Whispering Time. I mean, some of them joined up with him, but most didn't, and they are angry, and now they're fighting with him, and therefore the enemy of their enemy is someone they might want to ally with, and that enemy of the Whispering Tyrant is everyone else who's around there. So
Yes.
orcs have started teaming up with vastly more frequency because they have to against a greater threat. And so that's what you get with orcs. So they're different. There are 4 orc heritages in here. The Badlands orc come from sort of sun-scorched Badlands, and they can hustle for longer before they get tired, and they deal better with environmental heat. They're not like lava orcs. They don't have fire resistance, but they can deal better with the environment, and they can go for really long hikes and marches.
The deep orcs have terrain expertise skill feat for underground terrain, and the combat climber skill feat because they're used to surviving in harsh terrain and battling on rocky cliffs.
Hold scarred orcs are part of a community that does ritual scarification, which a lot of them do in Balksen in Golarion, and that gives them even more hit points than they already have, a pretty impressive amount, and the Die Hard feat.
And then, finally, the Rainfall Orcs, born in Rainforest. Also, excuse me, just one moment here.
Okay.
Gain a circumstance bonus to athletics checks to climb and swim, as well as to saving throws against diseases.
That's right. Plus, there are ancestry feats that give you all sorts of attacks and some different things about taming beasts, extra athletic abilities, stuff that is based on your tattoos or ritual scarification, and then at higher levels some abilities about being better in bad situations, like Undying Ferocity when you gain temporary hit points when you have to use your Ferocity, or Death's Drums where persistent damage or wounded value give you a bonus on Fortitude save, or finally Rampaging Ferocity where you use Ferocity to stay up in the fight and you get to actually just attack someone when that happens. It's like, oh, you thought you dropped me down? Mm-hmm. No, I'm still in it, and I'm gonna hit you.
And if I take you down, then
if I take you down, it doesn't. If that was the finishing blow, I don't count this against my once per day orc ferocity.
Pretty cool.
Yep, very handy.
And looks like we just got some subs coming through here.
Oh, thank you for gifting those subs, Altro.
5 gift subs.
That's right.
Next up, while Mark is processing that, next up after orcs, we have rat folk, also known as Isoki.
That's right.
They are They have dexterity and intelligence as their ability boosts, and strength as their flaw. They're very agile and clever, but not particularly strong. They tend to also be part of very large extended families.
That's right.
And have a culture that values community, togetherness, but not just staying in one place, though. Also, they value travel. So you might find a lot of Isoki on merchant caravans or in other walks of life that allow them to travel across the world, such as adventurers.
If you're an Isoki, you might have pride in your large extended family and stay in contact with everyone in it. You might like to travel near and far in search of new experiences, likely collecting trinkets. You might work well with others, but others probably mistake you for a were-rat or another monster. They are probably surprised by your careful grooming and other fastidious habits, and they probably think you're crowding them and invading their personal space because of the way that you like to kind of get in real close.
Mm-hmm.
Packed like rats.
Yes, they have relatively small personal space bubbles.
Yep.
So when it comes to the heritages, there are deep rats whose ancestors live deeper underground and have dark vision. The desert rats who are native to arid plains. They can run on all fours to increase their movement speed, and they also don't have to worry so much about environmental effects or starvation or thirst.
Yes, the long snout rats have very, very long snoots, and that causes them to have an imprecise scent. Sewer rats come from the sewers. They are immune to the disease filth fever in particular and do better against diseases and poisons.
And shadow rats have this vaguely unnatural sense about them that makes them threatening. They are trained in intimidation, and they can coerce animals, which, as you might imagine, does not require them to share a language.
That's true.
When it comes to ancestry feats, we've got sort of they've got nice cheek pouches that they can store gear in.
That's true. There's a lot of rat-based abilities, like getting rat familiars, talking to rats,
navigating warrens. There's one called Lab Rat that about spending a bunch of time in an alchemy lab.
Yep.
That helps you against poison and harmful effects of elixirs.
There's cheek pouch upgrades. There's rat magic that is magic that can send a rat as a messenger to help you out.
There's Overcrowd, which lets you pack into small spaces more efficiently.
Yep.
And you can
rat
rat form to transform.
Just turn into a regular rat.
Or at 13th level, get yourself a burrow speed.
That's right.
And then we've got Tengu.
We do have them.
So Tengu are dexterous, and they've got that wickedly sharp beak. So they are always armed.
That's true.
If you are a Tengu, you might be gregarious and eager to find a flock of your own, voraciously absorb the practices of those around you, sometimes even forgetting where they came from. Be willing to take on any task or job, no matter what others think. Speaking of what others think, they probably look to you as a source of eclectic skills and knowledge, especially related to languages. Get confused by your simultaneous respect for and disregard for tradition, and have trouble reading your expressions, or regard you with suspicion or superstition.
That's right. Okay, also, oh wow, thank you for the amazingly giant chair numbat. I've actually never seen a red number on a chair.
Wow, thank you! That was 10,000 bits. Thank you.
Yes, that is so much. Thank you very much.
So, wow, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Tengu are, speaking of superstition, there are certain superstitions about Tengu being able to eat curses, which you can see.
They come from a real place.
Yes. The first Tengu heritage here, the Jinx Tengu, has the ability to, whenever they succeed against a curse or misfortune effect, they critically succeed instead. And when something tries to doom them, they can attempt a flat check.
Yep.
To reduce the amount of doom that is coming in toward them.
Be less doomed. Mountain Keeper Tengu are kind of, Yamabushi Tengu style, up on a mountain Tengu aesthetics. And they can disrupt undead, which is normally not a primal spell, but as a primal spell because of their connection to the spirits of the world and the great beyond. Sort of, like the life force, essence, spirits of nature that are not exactly spirits, plus the spirits that are spirits in the great beyond, all of that kind of get combined for them. And that's how Divine and Primal gets combined, because they both are, Divine has vital essence, life essence, and spiritual essence, and Primal has vital and material essence and are in this world. So they kind of blend those two with the Mountain Keeper Tengu.
So folks are talking about Tengu being great for Oracle. Just like the iconic Tengu is an Oracle, and also the thematics work really well too. That's
true. So there's also Skyborn Tengu. Those are Tengu who specifically take well to the sky because of having very light bones, or maybe one of the few Tengu born with wings or a connection to the spirits. Regardless, they take no falling damage.
Storm Toss Tengu, who are resistant to electricity and have no trouble targeting concealed creatures concealed by rain or fog, probably due to a blessing from the god Hei Fang.
Mm-hmm.
And Talon Tengu, who have sharp talons in addition to their beaks.
That's right. Oh, Joe misheard Skyborn as Cyborg Tengu.
I mean,
that sounds more like a versatile heritage.
Yeah, it does sound more like a versatile heritage.
All right. So, Ancestry feats, we've got, they've got all sorts of different feats. They have one that is very much just like is bird squawk,
Mm-hmm.
where they let out an awkward squawk when they mess up a social check to try to get a regular failure instead of a critical failure. They've got
Because it's sort of like, oh, I guess they didn't mean that offense. They just are being really awkward, as I could tell, for the fact that they're just squawky.
Yep.
They have a scavenger search, which makes them be able to search larger areas. They've got a eat fortune, which lets them disrupt fortune and fortune and misfortune effects.
Mm-hmm. Long nosed form, where they turn into a curious looking human form that has a very long nose. There's
Now, is this the one that James Case was working at when he was literally in a Tengu shrine?
yeah, he was literally in a Tengu. Yes, that's correct. And there are photographic evidence that he was doing that. A one-toed hop, where they kind of hop on that one toe. That was also from the actual myth. They've got flight eventually, Tengu weapons, and the Dai Tengu form, where they turn into their long-nosed form but are also enlarged and flying. So, all sorts of fun Tengu stuff. And the Tengu fans originally created for this section did not fit. A lot of things didn't. Ancestries always take way more space than you think, and they made it into Ancestry Guide.
Yes, which we talked about
That's
when
all.
we were going over that book.
That's all 5 ancestries, but they're still versatile heritages. So what are those? Well, normally we said they're heritages for all these ancestries that you can pick. With versatile heritages, you can take them for any ancestry, except for sometimes maybe there's some that don't work at the GM's discretion because the ancestry just really doesn't connect, but at the GM's discretion, you can come up with a reason for pretty much any of them to work. And we've got the Changeling, Dhampir, and Aasimar, Duskwalker, and Tiefling Planar Scions in there.
All right,
Starting
so first
with
off, these
changelings.
are the changelings.
Yep, they are the children of hags who don't really want to raise a child, so they just kind of replace them with somebody else's child so that other people will raise the child. And then when their changeling is ready, the hag mother might do something called the call, especially more common by vast amounts among female changelings, which led many people to think there only were female changelings because the male changelings weren't really called, so people thought maybe they were humans.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a changeling, you might cherish and protect those friends and family who accept you as you are. You might seek to better understand your hag mother and the gifts she gave you for good or ill, or distance yourself from your heritage. You might fear the day you hear the call and worry you might not be able to resist, or perhaps you already fight to resist it every day. Others probably assume you practice occult or primal magic, or that you participate in a coven. They probably worry you might secretly be a monster or become one and turn on them. And they probably notice and speculate about your distinctive eyes. It's an uncommon heritage that you can take.
So the changeling, a lot of the first level feats here for the changeling are lineage feats that are based off of what type of hag your character's mother was.
That's
whether
right.
they are a sea hag or a green hag or a night and sea hag. Green Hag, Night Hag, and Annis Hag are all in here.
Those are the ones from Bestiary 1. Lineage
Yes.
feats specify a physiological lineage your character has, such as the type of hag that birthed the changeling character, or the type of fiend that influenced a tiefling's birth. You can only have one lineage feat. You can select such a feat only at first level, and you can't retrain into or out of a lineage feat. Now, if you don't take it, it doesn't mean that you aren't descended from any hag. It just means you don't specifically get any powers from being descended from whoever you're descended from. But there's other feats. It's not only lineage feats. However, a high percentage are lineage feats because there's only really a page for these feats. So.
There is a 5th level feat called that's about having built up mental resistance from having to deal with hearing the call for a while. You can gain accursed claws so that your claws do persistent mental damage, or you might even gain some hag magic.
Yep. Hag magic, which gives you certain spells based on which type of hag you have. And they are basically based on spells that are available from a coven, including the spells contributed to a coven by a hag of your mother's type. And that is Changeling.
On to Dhampir.
Dhampir, the children of vampires. Dhampir are kind of part vampires, so they're not exactly alive or dead, but they're basically living creatures, but they have negative energy affinity.
So they're harmed by positive damage and healed by negative effects as if
they were undead. So you look at that effect, and what does it say that happens to undead? That is what happens to you if it's just something that would do positive damage or heal for negative effects. So, for instance, harm says that it deals negative damage to the living, and it heals undead. So, but you wouldn't be like, well, but I'm living and I don't take negative damage, so I take no damage. You say, oh, well, it heals undead, so I treat it as if I'm undead and I'm healed. Similarly, heal heals living creatures and harms undead. So you look at what it says for undead, and it says you're harmed. So you don't just say, oh, I'm healed for 0 because I'm not healed by healing.
Yes. And that plays right into the second bullet point under things that you might do. You might take special precautions to avoid being exposed to helpful healing magic.
Yes, quote, helpful healing magic.
You want to make sure that people that you travel with know about the fact that you are a Dhampir.
You might distance yourself from your heritage by trying to blend into society or hunting undead. You might find yourself fascinated by the sight, smell, or taste of blood. Others probably feel unsettled by your ghostly pallor and sharp teeth. They probably wonder about or even romanticize your origins and motivations, and they probably find themselves strangely drawn to your grace, charm, and appearance. So that's the situation with Dhampirs.
So they can have some things that you might expect that vampires would have, such as fangs, the ability to see in the dark, the ability to transform into a bat, or the ability to charm others.
That's right.
But they might choose to go a different route, become an undead slayer, for example. Mm-hmm. Or maybe there's also some feats based on different types of vampires that they might be.
You can have a lineage from Nosferatu. You can have it from the common vampires Moroi, or you can have it from I think that's it for this one. All the other ones are in Lost Omen's Ancestry Guide. Plus Symphony of Blood.
Yeah, there you go. Vampiric Insanguination.
That's right. Dhampirvania Symphony of Blood.
And they can have bloodletting fangs, so they can deal persistent bleed damage when they bite you.
Yep. All sorts of great vampire-ish stuff. Then there's Planar Scions.
Starting off with the Aasimar.
They're descended from / connected to celestial entities, beings from the good aligned planes in the outer sphere, heaven, Elysium, and Nirvana, not in any actual order. You might possess a strong sense of fashion, favor exquisitely crafted tools, or carry yourself with instinctual grace. You might feel a strong kinship with outcast orphans or others who have been misunderstood or marginalized, and you might have a beloved pet or a close relationship with a sibling or childhood friend. Others probably assume you're a supernatural messenger from beyond, or wholeheartedly enjoy your supernatural legacy. They probably treat you with worship or reverence, but distance you by putting you on a pedestal, and they probably think you can provide simple and free supernatural solutions for all their problems.
Mm-hmm. And there's an interesting section here about alignment that talks about how Aasimars are a bit more likely to be good aligned, but that's for a variety of factors, not just sort of the influence of the connection that they have to Celestials, but also the fact that, but also the way that people treat them. The people tend to think of Aasimar as a blessing, and so therefore they tend to be treated well.
That's right. And then there's some Aasimar feats. They have a little more space for it. Mm-hmm. So you've got your lineages. Here we've got angels, archons, and azanas, which are from those 3 planes, heaven, Nirvana, and Elysium, down in order from lawful good to chaotic good. You can get a halo. You can get some kinds of resistances. There's magic spells you can get based on which type of lineage you picked. Angel wings, or any really celestial wings. Countermeasures against the divine because of your own partial divinity. Healing and removal spells. Good damage. Summoning celestials. Even celestial word to do a divine decree, or eternal wings to eternally have wings.
That's pretty cool.
So next up, Duskwalkers. Duskwalkers are the only ancestry or versatile heritage here that were originally written by Linda in Pathfinder 1st Edition.
That is true. So, Duskwalkers came about because of a bargain between Psychopomps and Duskwalkers. There's only a limited number of Duskwalkers that can be in existence at any one time, which is why they are certainly not a common versatile heritage. They have an inherent understanding of the cycles of life and death. Generally, they feel some sense of responsibility for this legacy that they've inherited. Though more in recent years, they have come to be more independent and feel less weighed down by the, oh my gosh, we are the few who are allowed to exist, and we must perform our duties as given to us by our ancestors.
Honestly, that situation is probably why they were probably close to being rare, but as a heritage for adventurers, they're actually listed here as uncommon, probably mainly because there aren't very many, but almost all of them are adventurers, because it's like you've got a second chance in life to do something major that you weren't able to do the first time, and even the Psychopomps agreed that your life was cut short before it happened. So that kind of suggests that, like, this is a heritage full of adventurers, even though there aren't very many. So if you're a Dustwalker, you might seek out opportunities to form strong friendships with a diverse array of companions. You might become focused on preventing the spread of undeath, and you might be intrigued at finding your identity in a previous life. Others probably assume you're a necromancer or have some other strange interest in death or the dead, and they probably want to know if you remember your past life or ask you about the secrets of death or the afterlife.
There's a question here. Just to ask, is it intended that Abundant Steps can't be cast at level 6 when you take this feat due to being a 4th level spell?
Well, that's not from the Advanced Player's Guide.
Not from the APG. Okay.
Yeah. It is a monk feat from the core rulebook.
All right.
So I think we're not going to, like, divert and take time other than the time that we just took for the fact that we asked the question on air.
Fair enough.
All right. So we could do that if we do a reactions to the core rulebook or a question episode again, probably, maybe. But the problem is we don't give official answers, and so that means that. But people often take them as official, so we have to be careful. All right. So for Dustwalkers, you aren't really descended from a specific Psychopomp. There aren't any lineages, but you can get some cool stuff. Ghost Hunter against incorporeal creatures, Gravesight for dark vision, Life Sense to sort of sense creatures within a certain distance, based on their being alive or undead. Spirit Soother, where you can just sort of find haunts that are around you. Ward against corruption to help you against undead. A lot of things against undead. Spirit Strikes to help you against, do negative damage to living creatures and positive damage to undead. Resist Ruin to protect you against undead even more and do a Death Ward. And Boneyard's Call, where you can just plane shift to the Boneyard.
That's pretty convenient.
Yep.
Particularly if you've got yourself some Psychopomp allies by that level, which you probably do.
Yep.
Particularly if you're taking that feat.
So lastly for the heritages is Tiefling. They are connected to evil, fiends, hell, Abaddon, and the abyss. If you're a Tiefling, you might have a strong sense of self-confidence born from a life of having to rely on yourself. You might feel a kinship with society's underprivileged or criminal elements, or even seek positions of power on the wrong side of the law. You might place incredible value on hard-won friendships and hold these companions closer than your blood family. Others probably assume you faced numerous challenges due to your heritage. They probably mistake you for an evil agent of a sinister cult, a fiend worshiper, or even a fiend yourself. And they probably think you have associations with powerful fiends, potentially trying to bargain with you for power of their own. So, as a tiefling, you can get fiendish eyes, you can gain a sort of a fiendish form that gives you a claw, hoof, jaws, or tail. You can get a lineage based on demons, daemons, and devils, because those are easy to distinguish from each other.
Mhm.
Demons being the chaotic evil, fiends from the abyss, daemons are the neutral evil
And in
ones for
terms of
Abaddon.
the different
Devils are from
features
hell.
that you might have as a tiefling character, one of the things about tieflings is that it's not just, oh yeah, you know, your character is connected to a pit fiend and therefore you have features that look like a pit fiend. It says here even tiefling twins could have radically different
Yes.
different features. So when you have a tiefling character, there's a lot of freedom with the features that you choose.
Even especially the pitborn from the abyss, which is very confusing since the hell is sometimes called the pit. Um, Specifically say that they are super different from each other, and so the lineage feat isn't even the same every time. It's just like, pick some weird difference here. You're trained in athletics, and pick a skill feat from athletics that fits with the thing that you chose for your physical feature. So, like, if you choose to become for instance, have webbed hands, then you might get underwater marauder athletics feat that's about swimming.
There's a question: how many tiefling leshies have people created? I don't know, but tiefling leshies are pretty cool. It makes me think of the scenario blooming catastrophe. Yes.
Yeah. See, I'm sure there have been, and you can get fiendish resistances, a skillful tail, maledictions, like kind of magic based on your lineage, fiend wings, relentless wings that stay up all the time. It's got sort of like the reverse version of some of the Aasimar abilities, plus Fiend's Door, since a lot of Fiends have some kind of a Dimension Door. You can have some kind of a Dimension Door too. So that's Tieflings. Let's move on to the old Ancestries. They
More
each get a
feats for them.
page of stuff. So let's just look at what stands out to be biased for in each one. So let's see.
So there's Eye for Treasure for dwarves, which makes them makes the character a lot more familiar with seeing good artisanship. It gives them the Crafter's Appraisal skill feat. Gives them the Crafter's Appraisal skill feat for free.
So that's your most biased one on this page.
I don't know. I think that's pretty cool. What about the returning throw? That seems pretty nifty. Having the weapon arc and ricochet back to your hand.
Mm-hmm. Sheltering Slab is kind of cool, where you use the stone around you to try to avoid being flanked. That's a fun one. And Telluric Power, where the earth beneath your feet can give you a little bit of additional damage against someone who's standing on the same earth or stone surface that you are.
There's a lot of earth and stone thematics going on here.
That's
for
right.
Sure.
Then there's also elves. So the elven ancestry feats include a variety of different situations. So there is Magic Rider, where you're good at different, like elves build gates that even go to different planets. So you can transport more people with teleportation. Or Avenge Ally, where you just kind of expect your allies are going to die at some point and you won't. So now when this is about to happen, you're kind of getting upset at enemies, and you get to make an attack and roll twice and use the higher result once every 10 minutes when that happens.
There's several feats in here with the general theme of you've lived a long time and you've seen everything. Like Ancestral Suspicion, which makes you be a lot better at resisting effects that would control you, and also better at noticing when others are under mental control.
Yep, or martial experience, when you have just lived so long that you've used so many weapons that honestly, even a weapon you've never even heard of whatsoever is not that unfamiliar to you because it's got to be similar to something you've used. So you add your level when you're not proficient with the weapon. So it's still 2 worse than being trained, but it's not like a million worse.
And in sister linguistics, when you're like, oh yeah, I was fluent in that language 50 years ago. Let me dig it up.
Yep. Then there's gnomes. Gnomes have a lot of interesting feats here. There's like the empathetic plea where you're like, oh, please, and you give them puppy dog eyes to try to take less damage. Or razzle dazzle, where you try to dazzle them for more time. Let's see. There's life leap, where you kind of transform into life essence to kind of move to the other side of a creature through its own life force.
And Homeward Bound, where twice per week you can just travel back and forth between the material plane and the first world, and you do your body's natural resonance. You don't need a tuning fork. You're your own tuning fork.
Absolutely. There's also instinctive obfuscation, where you reactively once per day give yourself a mirror image with 2 additional images instead of 3. So there's some pretty cool stuff. Oh yeah, project persona. I think you just make your clothes look more outlandish and interesting.
What about a goblin? Extra squishy makes the goblin trained in acrobatics, and makes it a lot easier for them to squeeze through tight spaces.
Yep.
I like extra squishy as the name of the feat.
Twitchy, you're kind of always ready for danger in any situation. You can try to kneecap your enemy.
You can be a loud singer to increase the range of your goblin song.
You can cling on to someone and just kind of ride around on them, on your enemy, and then reckless.
What does reckless abandon do? I see the first sentence. Despite a lifetime filled with questionable decisions, you've managed to survive. It's so you have uncanny luck that lets you avoid the consequences of your own actions.
So basically, once per day, if you do something that causes a bad thing to happen to you on your own turn, just completely due to you, not due to somebody else, like, you know, doing their own thing, you wind up getting a success instead of a failure or critical failure against it. So basically, if you run through a prismatic wall and you now have to make you go against all the effects of the prismatic wall.
You ran into a trap that requires.
Yep, you run into a trap,
yeah.
So you always get a success, not a critical success, but a success once per day for your own something you brought upon yourself. It doesn't count something that was already active before your turn began. It's only something that's like I'm just gonna do this.
So, otherwise known as Leroy Jenkins the feat.
Well, I guess Leroy Jenkins caused a bunch of dragon monsters to add to the fight, and that would probably still happen if you woke them up, but at least Leroy himself would be a little safer. So, halflings actually had some heritages, by which I mean, one, the jinxed halfling, who instead of being lucky is very unlucky, and they can't have the halfling luck feat, but they can try to jinx people and make them clumsy. They also have some feats like folksy patter, where they kind of talk in code to their allies, and others about like being underfoot from the enemies and toppling them around, and even creating a shadow self once per day if they are legendary in stealth.
Or, let's see, Step Lively, where you can step into another space adjacent to an enemy and easily step around a large opponent. Very useful for getting flanks, for
Yep,
sure.
That and Dance Underfoot and Toppling Dance. There's a lot about, like, going around bigger enemies. So, humans. What are those humans up to?
It looks like they are working together as a group to aid each other. They are being more. They're able to move more quickly, and with less of an effect from their burdens when they're traveling long distances. They're able to bounce back from near-death experiences
without increasing wounded. The Sense Allies feat can be better than it seems. That's where you have really sneaky allies who would be undetected to you, aka you don't even know where they are, and you just automatically. They're hidden, as long as they're within 60 feet. and that would, and you also only need a 5 instead of an 11 to target them, which is kind of like only being concealed. So that basically means that as long as you're within 60 feet of willing allies, even if they're invisible and much sneakier than your own perception can pick up, you always know exactly which square they're in, and you have an 80% chance that you can affect them with stuff. So it's good if you're in a team full of like rogues and illusionists, and other people are always hiding around. Plus, you can. They've got some half-elf ancestry feats, earned glory, where you can be good at performance, and pinch time, where you wind up casting haste due to being caught between 2 lives.
So with that, we reach the end of the Ancestry section, and there are a bevy of new common backgrounds here. From bandits, bandit, bookkeeper. Let's see, I see pilgrim, squire, teacher, tax collector. There's a whole spread here of all sorts of common backgrounds.
That's right.
Which are available to your characters, and also provide inspiration for other backgrounds that you could use. Because the standard backgrounds have a very specific pattern about them of what they give you. So these can provide some inspiration there as well. And I see a comment. It's not tax collector. It's priest of Abadar. Clearly, well, you could call that background priest of Abadar in your game. You know, exactly. You can easily reskin these themes to make a version that works better for your game if these aren't exactly what you're looking for.
That's right.
And after the common backgrounds, we have the rare backgrounds. Now, these rare backgrounds, as it talked about a bit in the beginning with how do you use rare backgrounds, they've got some more complex stuff going on with them that is going to require more something more complicated with what the GM is going to be doing.
You always
generally
have to discuss with the GM.
So for example, if your character is an amnesiac.
Yep. You really have to work with the GM on that to figure out the truth of what happened. You can leave it to the GM, so it's a secret. You can work together with the GM, leave it undecided until later. You don't know. And you even get more free ability boosts than normal, but your GM chooses one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like, it just even goes to show the mechanics. You can't even select this if you don't have a GM who's going to work together with you to figure something out about Amnesiac.
And then there's
although I still see people online who are like, oh, so I'll just take Amnesiac and get these exact 3 ability boosts. And it's like, but you won't necessarily get those exact 3 ability boosts because you will pick the 2 that you definitely want to have, and your GM will pick one based on some kind of secret of your amnesia, and it's probably not going to be the 3rd one. There's only a 1 in 4 chance.
Yeah. And blessed as well. You can see the you might be trained in blessed by a deity. You could be trained in a lore skill associated with the deity if you know who they are, or maybe you don't know who's blessed you, and maybe you have guidance as a divine innate spell will, or maybe the GM determines a similar blessing that you might have.
And the GM determines a random lore skill if you don't know who blessed you. And you can be cursed, where you have some kind of major curse. It could be one that, like, your family has hereditarily, or you have, and you're trying to get rid of it, and you somewhat protected yourself, but it hangs upon you, and so you gain occultism and curse lore, a warding sign you can make to help you against any kind of situation that's magical, but especially if it's a curse. But the curse has lingering manifestations on you that the GM helps design. You can be a feral child. They have fewer ability boosts, but have low light vision or dark vision if you would already have low light vision, plus imprecise scent, which is a lot of extra stuff, but fewer ability boosts. Because they just kind of grew up in the wild and didn't have as much of a background that was well-rounded. It was just animals, like a bunch of animals raised you. Maybe, like the Romulus and Remus situation.
Or maybe with Feybound, you made a pact with Fey. And you know a lot about Fey, and you have this Fey's Fortune action that you can do to once per day roll twice on a skill check and take the better result. And you've got a lot. But the question is, though, what is this bargain, and what will the price be, and when will it come due?
That's true. or you can be haunted by a spirit, maybe from childhood or after a traumatic event. And you can be trained in occultism and another skill the haunting entity knows about. And basically, anytime you attempt a skill check, the haunting entity might aid you and give you a +1.
Folks are talking a bit in the chat about loving amnesiac. It's great to get a character a player doesn't have a specific concept in mind. Well, if you do that at Mark's table, you might possibly wind up being actually secretly the BBG.
I mean, that did happen before.
That was so awesome.
So the haunted entity is going to aid you sometimes when the GM decides, but if you fail, despite the haunted entity's aid, you get spooked and frightened too. And that initial frightened value of 2 can't be reduced by effects that would produce or prevent the conditions such as a fighter's bravery. You just get frightened too. Then there's returned, where you died and then miraculously returned with knowledge of the realms beyond death. And so you gain Die Hard. That's just something you get.
Or you could be royalty.
You could. Like in the picture there, where there's like the princess climbing down the tower and be like, I'm going to go to adventure with this giant sword. Look how happy I am. And all the birds are here to sing with me. You can be royalty, and that means that you have courtly graces, but also it's like courtly graces plus, because you're also royalty.
Yes.
That's basically what it is. So that's chapter 1.
Shall we wrap things up here? That seems like a tidy place.
That seems like a good place to go. Chapter 2 is probably going to be, it has a lot, but we're going to go through the classes, the new classes very quickly in chapter 2, because they'll have their own episodes if people want to vote for them.
Mm-hmm.
And then chapter 3 is enormous, and 4 and 5 are a little shorter. So I think that works.
Sounds good. All right, everybody.
So shall we say goodbye to YouTube? All right, bye YouTube.
Bye.